All right, so are you ready to really dive deep into a concept
I am ready.
that asks a pretty crazy question?
Go ahead.
Can you actually break a system by pushing it to its absolute limits?
Hmm.
That's accelerationism.
Oh, wow.
And today we're going to explore it
Okay.
using this really fascinating mix of sources we have.
Right.
Everything from early 20th century art,
Okay.
political theory,
Uh,
even some cyberpunk sci-fi.
I love it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
Yeah.
our mission,
Okay.
if you choose to accept it,
Okay.
is to understand this idea.
Right.
That seems kind of counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
Can pushing a system to its extreme limits actually lead to some kind of radical change?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is a big question.
Yeah.
And to see how this idea even came about,
Yeah.
let's rewind the clock
Okay.
back to the early 20th century.
Right.
This is a time when speed war and machines were all kind of colliding in this really explosive way.
Okay.
And we're going to start with the Italian futurists.
Okay.
These guys,
Yeah.
they were absolutely obsessed with speed and technology.
Well, it's interesting because Italy at the time was undergoing this period of rapid industrialization, modernization, which was a huge contrast to its past.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and the futurists saw this as a chance to just shatter the old world
Right.
and create a brand new one that was driven by the power of the machine.
They were all about embracing the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
And they weren't just talking about it.
Yeah.
They were living it.
Uh-huh.
One of their key figures,
Yeah.
Gabriele D'Annunzio, the poet,
Oh, yeah.
Daredevil.
Right.
This guy had this incredible villa on Lake Garda.
Oh, I've heard of this.
You've heard of this, right?
Yeah.
Imagine a warship
Wow.
literally embedded into the hillside surrounded by fighter planes.
That's wild.
Torpedo boats. I mean, this was like a shrine to speed and daring.
It's not just a house, it's a statement.
It's a statement.
Yeah.
Now D'Annunzio
Yeah.
and the futurists, they truly believed that speed
Mm-hmm.
could completely transform society.
Well, they even went so far as to develop
I know what you're going to say.
futurist mathematics.
I was going to say it.
Yeah.
They were trying to calculate the formula for revolution.
It's fascinating and also a little bit unnerving when you think about it.
It is unnerving.
Yeah.
And then there's their relationship with fascism,
Right.
which adds this whole other layer to the story.
Absolutely.
So how did they reconcile this fascination with speed and technology
Uh-huh.
with the often violent reality of war, which they seem to kind of glorify?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
While their embrace of war is undeniably problematic,
Sure.
their core argument was that this pushing to the extreme,
Right.
this acceleration, was necessary to redefine the relationship between humans and machines in this newly industrialized society.
Okay.
A society where technology was rapidly changing the nature of labor itself.
This idea of labor as this really intense, almost overwhelming experience of being pushed beyond your limits.
Yeah.
That also comes up in the work of Jean-François Lyotard,
Oh, absolutely.
who's this French philosopher.
Yeah.
And he makes this surprising connection between the avant-garde artist and the factory worker.
Yeah, it's a fascinating comparison.
It is fascinating.
He's not saying that factory work is literally the same as being an artist.
Right.
But his point is that both of them
Okay.
demand the construction of a new body and a new sensibility. They're both pushing the boundaries of human experience in response to the demands of this industrial society.
So the artist and the worker are both being forced to adapt to this accelerated pace of life,
Right.
to develop new ways of seeing and being in the world.
It's like being thrown onto a speeding train and having to figure out how to navigate this new reality on the fly.
You have to adapt or you get left behind.
Exactly.
And this theme of technological progress forcing this kind of accelerated evolution,
yeah.
that becomes even more pronounced in Walter Benjamin's work,
Oh, for sure.
particularly his reflections on World War I.
Right.
I was struck by his idea that war, with its speed, violence, technological overload, had actually created a new body,
Yeah.
a new human being,
A new kind of human.
one that couldn't just go back to the slower rhythms of the pre-war world.
Benjamin saw this profound transformation happening in the wake of the war.
Yeah,
A transformation that mirrored what Lyotard observed in the factory worker.
interesting.
The individual was being forced to adapt to this reality of constant shock speed and technological innovation.
Wow.
And it forever changed their perception of time and experience.
So we're starting to see a pattern here,
Yeah.
whether it's through war or industrialization. Technological progress seems to demand this kind of accelerated adaptation from humans.
We're constantly playing catch up with the machines we've created.
It's like we can't keep up.
It's a struggle to stay ahead of the curve.
And what's really fascinating
Yeah.
is that this idea of acceleration didn't just stay in art and philosophy.
Right.
It also played a big role in the political upheavals of the time,
Oh, absolutely.
particularly the Soviet Union after the revolution.
A truly pivotal moment in history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of upheavals,
Yeah.
let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about how these ideas of accelerationism
Right.
played out in post-revolutionary Russia.
Okay.
I mean, you have a nation in ruins, a shattered economy, civil war raging,
Yeah. A desperate need to rebuild.
the desperate need to rebuild everything from scratch.
Absolutely.
How did they even begin to approach this monumental task?
Well, for some Bolsheviks, this destruction, as tragic as it was, also presented a really unique opportunity.
Really?
They saw it as a chance to create a truly new society, a socialist utopia built from the ground up, free from the constraints of the old world.
Like a blank slate.
Exactly. It was a moment of radical potential, a degree zero, from which they could launch this complete societal transformation.
This leads us to a pretty paradoxical concept,
Right.
proletarian Taylorism.
Proletarian Taylorism.
Now, Taylorism was developed by Frederick Winslow Taylor,
Right. The American engineer.
an American engineer,
Yeah.
and it was all about efficiency and maximizing output,
Uh-huh.
ideas usually associated with capitalist production.
Yeah, not exactly socialist ideals.
Not socialist ideals at all,
Right.
but the idea behind proletarian Taylorism
Yeah.
was to utilize these techniques, often seen as tools of capitalist exploitation,
Right.
to create a socialist paradise.
It's almost like trying to hack capitalism using its own logic against it.
So instead of rejecting these tools of efficiency, they were trying to repurpose them
Exactly.
for a more utopian vision.
For a different kind of future.
Who were the key figures driving this movement?
Well, one of the central figures was Alexei Gastev,
Okay.
a poet-engineer and a staunch believer in the power of technology to liberate humanity from tedious labor.
Wow. So he envisioned a future where machines would do the heavy lifting.
Exactly, leaving humans free to pursue more creative and fulfilling endeavors.
That's a very utopian vision.
It was a vision that really resonated with the aspirations of a nation seeking to build a new world.
And his poem, We Grow Out of Iron,
Yeah.
really captures that sentiment.
It's a beautiful and powerful image.
But was it realized?
Sadly, no.
Oh.
The idea was compelling, but ultimately it failed.
Wow.
Not because the technology wasn't there,
Mm.
but because the system just couldn't escape the inherent problems of labor discipline.
So trying to create a utopia based on efficiency and control ultimately led to new forms of control and coercion.
It's a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of pursuing utopia through technological means.
So their attempt to accelerate towards this utopian ideal backfired.
In a way, yes.
What happened next?
Well, this failure of proletarian Taylorism paved the way for the rise of Stalinism,
Oh.
a much darker and more brutal form of accelerationism.
Okay.
Under Stalin, industrialization was pursued at a breakneck pace, but at a horrifying human cost.
So a tragic reminder that acceleration without a clear vision
Right.
and a humane approach
Yeah.
can have disastrous consequences. What were the key differences between this Stalinist approach
Yeah.
and the earlier, more utopian vision?
Well, the Stalinist regime became obsessed with controlling time itself,
Mm.
setting these unrealistic production targets and demanding absolute submission to the state.
So this drive for accelerated production became self-destructive.
Absolutely. It consumed everything in its path.
This sounds terrifying.
It was a dark chapter in history.
Is there any way to grasp the scale of this human cost?
Well, Andrei Platonov's novel, The Foundation Pit, offers a chilling glimpse into this reality.
Okay.
It's a story about workers digging this massive foundation pit for this future house of the proletariat.
Right.
But their efforts are constantly undermined by the absurdities and brutalities of the system.
So they're trying to build this utopian future,
Yes,
but the system itself is working against them.
exactly.
That's heartbreaking.
It's a powerful indictment of the dehumanizing aspects of totalitarian regimes.
Absolutely.
And it highlights the dangers of blind faith in progress in technology.
It seems like the Stalinist regime, in its attempt to accelerate progress, ended up creating this monstrous system that devoured its own people.
A tragic irony.
It is.
And this brings us to another crucial aspect of accelerationism,
Okay.
its relationship to technology.
Right.
While earlier thinkers focused on the physical speed of machines,
Mhm.
The rise of computers and cybernetics shifted the focus to the speed of information and the potential for human augmentation.
Wow.
This marked a new chapter in the evolution of accelerationist thought.
So from the physical machines of the futurists
Right.
to the digital realms of cyberspace,
Exactly.
the idea of acceleration continued to evolve,
It kept pace with the changing times
taking on new forms
and raising new questions.
about the relationship between humans and technology.
Absolutely.
It seems like to fully grasp this shift,
Yeah.
we need to venture into the world of cyberpunk science fiction,
I'm game if you are.
particularly William Gibson's groundbreaking novel, Neuromancer.
A classic.
The classic.
Yeah.
All right, so from the Italian futurists to the digital landscapes of cyberpunk, we've seen how this concept of accelerationism has evolved alongside technological advancements.
It's a fascinating trajectory.
But how did this idea,
Right.
born in the early 20th century,
Yeah.
re-emerge in the digital age?
It's a question worth exploring.
And what new anxieties and possibilities did it explore?
We'll delve into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned. We just explored how the early 20th century grapples with accelerationism, from the futurists and their love of speed to the Soviet Union and their experiment with proletarian Taylorism.
Yeah.
But as we move into this digital age, things get even more complex.
Yeah.
And cyberpunk fiction,
Right.
especially William Gibson's Neuromancer, really captures this shift.
Oh, absolutely. Neuromancer throws us right into this world of cyberspace where people can basically leave their bodies behind
Wow.
and exist purely in data. It's like the ultimate acceleration, this complete detachment from the physical world and its limitations.
Gibson paints this picture of Night City,
Yes.
this sprawling urban jungle where technology and capitalism have just run wild.
It's a vision of the future that's both exhilarating and terrifying.
He even calls it a deranged experiment in social Darwinism,
Wow.
designed by a bored researcher who kept one thumb permanently on the fast-forward button.
That's intense.
It's a pretty intense image.
It really gets at the heart of this tension,
Okay.
Technology lets us transcend our physical limits.
Right.
But at what cost?
Yeah, are we becoming these disembodied ghosts in the machine? Or are we harnessing this power for something better?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Neuromancer explores both sides of that coin.
How so?
Well, we have Casey,
Yeah, the hacker.
right? He's cut off from cyberspace. And he represents that fear of being left behind in the meat, as Gibson calls it.
Trapped in the physical world.
Exactly.
Then there's Molly Millions,
Oh,
the
yeah.
augmented street samurai,
Right, she embraces technology.
with her implanted razor blade.
She's a cyborg warrior.
I mean, she's a symbol of this thrilling but also dangerous fusion of human and machine.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
Neuromancer doesn't really give us easy answers.
No, doesn't.
It makes us consider both the allure and the potential dangers of this technological acceleration.
So it's leaving us with more questions than answers.
In a way, yes.
And this is where things get really interesting,
Yeah.
because in the 1990s, you have Nick Land and the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit,
The CCR.
or CCRU.
Yeah.
They take these cyberpunk ideas and really push them to the extreme.
We really radicalized the concept of accelerationism.
What did they believe?
Well, Land's work is notoriously dense.
I can imagine.
But he essentially argued that we need to push capitalism to its absolute breaking point. Embrace the meltdown.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
It's like they're trying to outrun the apocalypse.
In a sense, yes, they saw the breakdown of the system as a necessary step towards creating something new.
Were they influenced by anything in particular?
They were very much influenced by the speed and intensity of electronic music, like jungle and drum and bass.
Okay.
They saw it as the sonic embodiment of the accelerationist impulse.
They even came up with this term cybergothic.
Right, to describe their vision, this blend of technological futurism with a kind of dark, almost nihilistic acceptance of the destructive forces unleashed by capitalism.
So they saw destruction as a kind of creative force.
In a way, yes, they believed that in order to build something new, you first have to tear down the old.
But is accelerating blindly towards destruction really the answer?
Well, that's the core of the debate.
Is there another way?
And this is where we turn to Walter Benjamin.
Okay.
He offered a very different perspective.
How so?
He argued that unbridled acceleration, even in the name of revolution, could lead to catastrophe.
So he was more cautious.
Yeah, he was very aware of the potential dangers of these powerful forces.
And he used this really powerful image.
Oh, yes.
The emergency brake.
Right. It's not just about going faster.
Yeah.
It's also about knowing when to stop or at least change course.
Did he explain what he meant by the emergency brake?
He was deeply concerned about the destructive potential of capitalist progress, which he saw as this runaway train hurtling towards disaster.
Hmm.
He believed we needed to find a way to interrupt this trajectory to pull the emergency brake.
So redirect it.
Yes, and redirect that energy towards a more just and equitable future.
So it's not about stopping progress altogether.
Right.
It's about recognizing that speed without control, without a clear destination, can be incredibly dangerous.
Exactly.
But I imagine not everyone agreed with Benjamin's call for a radical break.
You're right, there were other perspectives. Bertolt Brecht,
Okay.
the German playwright and poet,
Yeah.
he offered a more nuanced approach.
What did he think?
Well, he believed that we need to engage with the tools of capitalism.
Even the ones that seem oppressive.
Yes, even those in order to subvert them and create something better.
So not just rejecting technology or progress outright,
Right.
but finding ways to repurpose them for different ends.
Exactly. He was fascinated by things like behaviorism,
Okay.
which was being used in advertising and propaganda to manipulate people.
Hmm.
He saw it as a powerful tool that could be harnessed for revolutionary purposes if it were refunctioned.
So kind of like turning the weapons of the enemy against them?
Precisely.
But how do you actually do that?
Well, Brecht had this fascinating concept of the slob.
The slob.
Yes, someone who disrupts the smooth functioning of the system by refusing to play by its rules.
So a kind of like wrench in the gears.
Exactly, a way of introducing creative chaos into this overly controlled system.
Do you have an example of how this slob archetype works?
One great example is his short story, The Sugar Bowl. It's about these two friends who visit their wealthy buddy who lives in this incredibly modern Bauhaus apartment,
Quote.
all clean lines and perfect order.
Hmm.
One of the friends, Miller, is driven crazy by this sterile perfection. So he starts rearranging the furniture, spilling things, making a mess.
He becomes the ultimate slob.
He does, and it's a way of highlighting the dehumanizing aspects of this hyper-rationalized, hyper-efficient environment.
I see.
The slob, through their seemingly irrational actions, reintroduces a sense of humanity, of messiness, into this overly controlled space.
So it's a reminder that progress shouldn't come at the cost of our basic human needs for connection and expression.
Exactly.
So we have Benjamin urging us to pull the emergency brake,
Right.
and Brecht suggesting we use the slob to disrupt the system from within.
Two different approaches to the same problem.
Both grappling with the dangers of unchecked acceleration.
Yeah, but offering different strategies for resistance.
And what unites them?
I think it's a deep suspicion of this idea of a linear, progressive view of history, where technology automatically leads us to a better future.
So they're not anti-technology.
No, but they're cautious.
They're wary of its potential for harm.
Exactly.
This brings us back to Benjamin's image of the runaway train.
Uh-huh.
But he actually has another even more powerful image.
Oh, yes. Tell me about it.
The angelic locomotive.
Right. In his writings on the Tay Bridge disaster, where a train plunged into the river during a storm.
Wow.
He describes this terrifying image of a locomotive driven by the forces of progress hurtling towards its own destruction.
So progress can lead to destruction.
That's the point he's making.
Are we really in control of the technologies we create?
That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
Or are they controlling us?
It's a possibility we can't ignore.
And this image of the angelic locomotive,
Yes.
it's connected to another famous Benjaminian figure.
The angel of history.
The angel of history.
Imagine this angel constantly looking back at the wreckage of the past.
Wow.
Even as it's being propelled forward by the winds of progress.
That's a powerful image.
History is always haunted by the ghosts of its own failures, even as we strive to create a better future.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
And for Benjamin, the only way to break free from this cycle of destruction
Yes.
is to interrupt the destructive trajectory of capitalism.
We need to find a way to change course.
So it's not about simply stopping progress.
No.
It's about consciously choosing a different path, even if that means embracing destruction as a necessary step towards creating something truly new.
Exactly.
It's a recognition that progress isn't always linear.
Sometimes you have to take a step back or even break things down to build something better.
But how do we translate these ideas into the present day?
That's a good question.
I mean, does this debate between acceleration and interruption
Yeah.
have any relevance in our world,
I think it's more relevant than ever.
where technology is advancing at an unprecedented pace?
It's a crucial question, and one that contemporary accelerationist thinkers like Alex Williams and Nick Cernick are directly addressing.
What are they saying?
They argue that we need a more nuanced approach to acceleration, one that goes beyond the simplistic idea of just speeding things up.
But how can you be an accelerationist and critique acceleration at the same time?
It does seem contradictory.
It does.
But they're not rejecting acceleration altogether.
Right.
They're critiquing what they call the brainless speed of traditional accelerationism.
Oh, okay.
The kind we see in phenomena like high-frequency trading, where algorithms are making split-second decisions that drive profits,
Right.
but also create massive instability in the global economy.
So they're saying that acceleration without a clear purpose, without a sense of direction, can be self-defeating.
Exactly. It can lead to more chaos and destruction instead of genuine progress.
So how do they propose we navigate this tension?
Between the need for speed and the need for control.
You know, it feels like we're constantly being bombarded with these promises of technological utopia, right?
Yeah.
Flying cars, AI, solving all of our problems, VR worlds,
Right.
where anything is possible. But the reality often feels very different.
Yeah.
Like we're stuck in this system that prioritizes profit over people and the planet.
It's that disconnect between the utopian potential of technology and the harsh realities of how it's actually used.
Right.
That creates this feeling of being trapped.
Yeah, like we're on this treadmill,
Uh-huh.
chasing the next technological fix.
Right.
But the underlying problems never really go away.
They just morph into something else.
They just get worse.
Exactly.
So are we just doomed to keep accelerating towards some kind of technological dystopia?
Wow.
Is that monstrous Shoggoth from Lovecraft's stories
Oh, yeah.
really the end game?
I don't think so.
This like shapeless, all-consuming entity
Oh, right.
that represents the destructive potential of technology without some kind of guiding intelligence.
I think the fact that we're having this conversation,
Yeah.
critically examining these ideas and grappling with the potential consequences of unchecked acceleration, shows that we're not just passively accepting this trajectory.
So we're not just giving up.
No, we're pushing back.
But if we're not going to just surrender to this idea of blind acceleration,
Right.
what's the alternative?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And there are no easy answers.
Right.
It's not about simply rejecting technology or progress, but being more intentional in how we engage with these forces.
So asking the tough questions.
Yes, like,
Cool.
what are we accelerating towards?
Right.
Who benefits and who gets left behind?
Like we need a new kind of map.
Okay.
One that doesn't just show us the fastest route,
Yeah.
but helps us navigate towards a destination that's actually worth reaching.
A destination that benefits humanity and the planet as a whole.
That's a great way to put it.
And this is where the work of contemporary accelerationists like Williams and Cernishek becomes so important.
Okay.
They argue that we need to move beyond this fetishized obsession with speed for speed's sake and towards a more strategic and politically informed approach to acceleration.
So it's not just about hitting the gas pedal. It's about knowing when to brake, when to steer.
Exactly.
And maybe most importantly, having a clear vision of where we actually want to go.
They advocate for what they call a folk politics of accelerationism.
What does that mean?
It means engaging with social movements, political organizations, everyday people
Okay.
to develop a shared vision of a future worth accelerating towards.
So it's like taking Benjamin's idea of the emergency brake and turning it into a steering wheel.
Yeah, a way to guide those powerful forces of technology and progress towards a more just and equitable future.
I like that.
It's about recognizing that acceleration isn't inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's a tool that can be used for different purposes.
Then the challenge is.
Wresting control of that tool from those who would use it for their own narrow interests and putting it to work for the benefit of all.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into accelerationism, I'm left with this feeling of cautious optimism.
Okay.
There's a lot to be concerned about, especially with how technology could be used to exacerbate inequality and harm the environment.
Absolutely. But the flip side of that concern is a sense of possibility.
Okay.
I mean, the ideas and critiques we've explored today offer valuable tools for thinking about how we can harness those powerful forces of technological and societal change.
Yeah.
And use them to create a more just equitable and sustainable future.
It's a reminder that the future isn't predetermined.
We have a role to play in shaping it.
And the choices we make today
Individually and collectively.
really do matter.
Whether we accelerate towards liberation or annihilation is ultimately up to us.
That's a powerful thought.
It's a call to action.
It is.
We need to be engaged, we need to be informed, and we need to be willing to fight for the future we want.
Well said.
I think that's a good place to leave it.
It is. It's been quite a journey exploring accelerationism.
From those early futurists to the anxieties of cyberpunk.
Right, and the thought-provoking critiques of Benjamin and Brecht.
It's a rich and complex topic.
It is.
And I hope our listeners are walking away with a deeper understanding of it.
Yeah, and a renewed sense of curiosity about the future and the role that we all play in shaping it.
Because as we've seen, the future is not something that just happens to us.
It's something we actively create.
Yeah.